Great. Thank you, Marta. And thank you to everybody who's able to join us today. My name is Harry Pasquarella, Vice President at Harbor Research. And the topic for today is smart home energy management systems. And we'll go through some introductions to start, both of CABA and of Harbor Research. I'll give a brief overview of the marketplace and then some of the work that we're doing with CABA in the coming months. And as I was saying earlier, we'll leave about 15 or 20 minutes or so for questions at the end, where we can open up the floor and I can do my best to answer questions and go from there. Again, brief overview of the conversation today, and I will hand it over to Marta or Greg to roll through a couple of quick slides on CABA.
Okay, I can handle these slides. So as most of you are aware, CABA is an international trade association in connected homes and intelligent buildings, and our truncated mission and vision statement is to really push the industry forward in any way we can. One of the ways in which we do that is these collaborative research projects. So essentially, we do some of these projects and we pool the funds from our membership base and some that become members for these projects, and then we share the research amongst those that fund it. So only the funders get the full research. So that's kind of what Harbor Research will be presenting, a little bit on the topic itself on smart home energy management systems, and a little bit on this research project that we'll be embarking on, because I know that there's a lot on the call that joined that have interest in the research and want to get more information on the research. So we figured that this would be a good avenue to do so, where we have an informational webinar from Harbor Research, providing a little bit of materials from the topic in general, but also into the research itself. If we go to the next slide. So this is our board of directors. We've had lots of changes in recently. So the past like few months, we've added Dwyer, Johnson Controls, Functional Devices, Schneider Electric, and then just recently Distech. So yesterday we added Distech, IOTA Communications, and Johnson Controls to the board. So we're making a push to add new companies and new organizations to the board of directors, and try to get our board numbers up. If there's anyone on the call that's interested, definitely reach out to myself, and we can have at least a discussion about what's involved in terms of benefits, responsibilities, and the opportunity itself. And my email is walker@caba.org. So with that, I'll pass it off to Harbor Research. We've done a lot of work with Harbor in the past. So these research projects always go to a competitive RFP process. And the initial funders selected Harbor quite a few times in the past, and they're also doing our research project on healthy buildings, indoor environmental quality on the large building side. And then they won this bid for the smart home energy management system. So far we have a few funders that have committed, like Bro Newtone, Residio, Ream, Snap One, and there's a few others that are looking to join. But with that, I'll pass it off to Harry to go over a little bit about Harbor and the topic itself.
Great, thank you, Greg. So a quick background of Harbor Research. As Greg mentioned, we've worked together for quite a few projects over the past 5 or 6 years at this point. Harbor Research is a research and strategy consulting firm completely focused on helping our clients develop new growth strategies around emerging technologies. We were founded in the 1980s, and back then we're mostly focused on new networking and computing technologies invading the industrial environment. But over time, as a lot of these technologies became cheaper and more democratized, that expertise shifted into more commercial and residential applications as well. So we serve two types of clients mainly today: large-scale technology suppliers, as well as startup innovators and growth companies in the space, developing new technologies to support smart systems, Internet of Things, and related activities, as well as a significant number of original equipment manufacturers and service providers that might leverage these technologies to provide better products and services to their customers. And so we really sit at the intersection of this in our work with CABA, supporting both technology suppliers, OEMs, and service providers, doing end customer research in both the intelligent building space and in the smart home space. A little bit about our background. We've been covering buildings and facilities for quite a while, the past 2 decades, and have worked with a number of companies that you saw on the board of directors slide, as well as many others as well over those years, and have quite a bit of experience both kind of on the energy side of things, everything from power generation and grid and the connection to buildings, as well as actual building systems themselves. So there should be a lot of familiar names on here. With that, I will start to get into the opportunity. So as I said, we've got about 12 or 15 slides today that we'll roll through on the smart home energy management opportunity to give you all a background of our perspective. And as Marta said, feel free to post some questions in the Q&A box, and we'll leave some time at the end to come back to those questions. We always like to start by showing an evolution of the smart home, and you know, some people might chuckle that we're going all the way back to the 1900s, but you know, when really, you know, we see this what is the smart home today evolving out of, you know, some of those original home appliances, you know, whether it be the vacuum cleaner or the refrigerator, that you know, we're increasing the comfort and convenience and livability for people in homes as far back as the early 1900s. You'll also see a little bit later, you know, first home security system developed in 66, first home computer concept in 66 as well. And really from there, a lot of the evolution of both appliances and technology is coinciding. So as computers gain traction, you know, there's starting to be more connected things, robotic vacuums, connected fridges, and so on. And all of these innovations, all of these technologies and devices were all meant to help make homes more comfortable, you know, more convenient, and safer and more secure for residents. So what is smart home today? A lot of individual use cases, a lot of single devices connected to networks to help enable some very specific applications. We're seeing some more, you know, smart home hubs, the Alexas, the Google Homes of the world, come into play and help organize some of this, but still, you know, more or less a lot of siloed applications, a lot of single applications doing their what they were built to do and not much else. All of this, as I was mentioning on the previous slide, tends to be across 2 main applications: the comfort and convenience set of applications that try and just increase the comfort or ease of use of certain systems, as well as safety and security. These are the 2 main value drivers that we see in the home. Now, we're talking about smart home energy management here, and of course there is a third, which is resource management and various values that come from that as well, whether that be saving on costs or relative sustainability, or just really trying to understand kind of how the home is functioning and how it could be functioning better. All occurs in that resource management function, but it is, in some aspects, in some respects, you know, a tertiary consideration or a secondary consideration to comfort and convenience and safety and security. And I think it's important to understand that, and we'll look at a few examples of that as we move forward. But we do see these 3 kind of what we might call application categories or value categories as what's driving adoption of new smart home things. And as this continues to evolve into the future, we'll see a lot more connection and integration of these values being provided by multiple types of devices and systems, all collaborating together to enable more compound applications, leveraging data across different devices and systems to help drive value for consumers and residents, as well as in some cases service providers, OEMs, and when we talk about resource management utilities as well. The context for energy management at this time is it's definitely growing in importance. Obviously, I'm sure we've all heard about all of the energy concerns and pricing issues in Europe. And so while CABA and this research that we're working on is more focused on North America, and energy prices aren't growing as quickly as they are in Europe, there is still a significant increase in costs associated with energy and electricity in the US and Canada as well. So a couple of data points from some recent news articles. US families have about $16 billion in utility debt, which is almost double what it was at the end of 2019. So of course, exacerbated somewhat by the pandemic, but also rising costs over the past year plus have really exacerbated this issue, and we'll see retail electricity prices continue to rise. On the right, you'll see that they've risen about 16% in the last year, mostly as a result of the increase in natural gas prices. But this is energy itself is also subject to the inflationary pressures that we're seeing, and while in the U.S. and Canada, these might be a little bit less pronounced than in Europe, still quite important and still quite a big issue for consumers. So what is smart home energy management? There's many definitions out there, ranging from pretty narrow, just management of different electricity usage and inputs into the home, to kind of the integration of all of that with other devices that actually use the electricity in the home, and as well as other sorts of resources like water and so on. We like to take the broader definition just because energy impacts so many different things. Everything from our ability to control the environment, to our ability to use the appliances that we buy, to any sort of electronics that we charge, lighting, and so on. And so it's important to understand the energy's true impact on the home to be able to capture the value or really communicate the value of these types of energy management systems to consumers, and hopefully try and find value propositions that drive consumers to actually purchase some sorts of solutions. So we like to take this full view, but again, this is probably more of a summary, and I think it's interesting to see kind of how different people define it, and something that we'll be looking at throughout this research. When we think of home energy management systems, we think of 6 main categories of kind of functional use cases or requirements. There's more. These are just some that we've seen kind of over and over again come up. So of course, the ability to visualize energy costs and consumption over a specific period or over a historical time period. The ability to visualize historical data and potentially even compare that historical data to other consumers of that energy. Alarms and notifications when there is issues, either overload or blackout or other sorts of changes that are occurring in somebody's interaction with a utility. This could also inform energy service providers, utilities, or other suppliers of system failures and blackouts and so on, which may be helpful to them in their own services. Energy load control, demand response, both more service provider or utility focused, and then also just the ability to aggregate data across a number of users and systems and be able to be more informed not just for a single person in a single household, but for many households in a neighborhood or community, or even across an entire city. So the use cases and requirements on the left are much more consumer driven, if you will, or consumer focused or consumer facing, if you will, versus the ones on the right are much more service provider focused or utility focused. And we think accounting for both ends of the spectrum are quite important to being able to properly capture and communicate the value of these systems to these users, as well as to really understand who we're designing for here. So there's certain aspects that should be served up for and designed for consumers, but there's other aspects that necessarily are more important to the utility, and therefore, as technology suppliers in the industry, taking in both sets of users into account is quite important. So we built this slide a couple of years ago, actually, when we were looking at this topic previously. But you know, energy management and kind of connection of consumers to how they consume energy starts with a paper bill, right? So I'm sure we've all received them before, but the paper bills that we receive from our utilities that break down the cost of the energy that we're using and how much energy we use, that is the baseline, right? It doesn't really have any smarts associated with it. Obviously, it's hard to make decisions based on one main number, but that's where all of this is evolving out of. And so there's things that companies have added to paper bills, like consumption trends over time, like comparing your energy use this month to your energy use this month last year, comparing to other similar households in your neighborhood. All of this is different ways that consumers have and are familiar with interacting with both their utility as well as with their energy usage. Now, as we increase in connectivity, as certain things get connected, as things become more smart, as we can collect more real-time data, and as we can portray that data, the ability to save more on energy increases quite a bit. And so being able to look at this within a given month, as opposed to just at the end of a given month through, say, a web portal, being able to understand which devices in your home or which areas within your home might be using the most energy. Different things like customer engagement between utilities and consumers that can be driven by some of this. All of that increases the ability for consumers to save, really for consumers to understand their energy usage, and then also for consumers to save on that energy usage or make better informed decisions about how, when, and for what they use their energy. And so this evolution is what we'll be looking at. How far are we actually through this evolution today? What are the drivers? What are the barriers, and so on? But we're not starting from scratch. We all have some understanding of our energy usage. It just is quite variable. At least that's our hypothesis. And how we drive it up from the bottom left to the upper right of this chart on the right here is what we'll be thinking about as we get into this research. And so this is from a survey that we did a few years ago, and then there will be a couple of other survey portrayals in the pages that follow. But whenever we're surveying consumers about what they think about when they think about what is the smart home and how they want to buy smart home products, cost savings tends to be the number one driver of buying smart home products. Of course, there's other aspects as well: reliability, improved comfort and convenience, ease of use, these kinds of things. But it's always important that to understand it always comes back to these cost savings. And so what we've done on this chart is just highlight, what the both the top considerations are, these darker blue, as well as the more energy or sustainability related drivers are. And you'll see cost savings up at the top is a hatched color of both the dark blue and the green, because it can be both energy as well as associated with other sorts of cost savings in the home. That said, sustainability benefits and energy utility efficiency programs ranks relatively low compared to those cost savings and reliability and so on. And so this is very important to understand. I always like to bring up the anecdote that Excel Energy, based in Colorado, are serving, I think, Colorado and a few other states around here. They did a survey of people in the Boulder area, a pretty liberal, energy conscious, sustainability conscious town, about what they care about most from their energy utility provider, and right at the top of that list was cost savings, as opposed to anything that has to do with sustainability or energy efficiency or renewables or anything like that. And so even in a environmentally conscious area, cost savings always wins out as a key driver for people in making decisions about how to adopt certain technologies or how to focus their dollars on what they think matters. So it's always interesting to come back to. This survey that we did, different from the previous slide, was part of the Connected Home Artificial Intelligence Landmark Research Project that we worked with CABA on in 20, I guess it was in the beginning of this year. And this was all about connected home AI adoption, and where automation was I guess, the level of automation, different levels of automation in the smart home today. Sorry, I'm just gonna get these guys to stop messaging me. So what we found in this survey was that something like a thermostat, everything that people have, either whether it be Ecobee or Nest or whatever that is one of the highest automated devices in the home that makes different decisions based on your typical energy usage, when you like to turn the thermostat up versus down, and how it kind of learns based on your preferences. Other sorts of energy related systems are relatively further down the level of automation here today. So whether that be lighting controls and fixtures, water heating and management, HVAC units and controls, blinds and shading systems, and so on. There's clearly varying levels of automation across the board here, but thermostats is interesting because it's one of those kind of key use cases that we found is like relatively automated, and people enjoy it being automated today. That said, homeowners and renters do desire further automation. And this was from that same survey asking a similar question, but just trying to say, what would you like further automated in your home? And so again, we've tried to highlight the energy, related use cases and activities here. And so you'll see lighting pretty high up there, heating and cooling systems pretty high up there. Even energy management was called out in both tenants and homeowners as things that they desired to be automated. And so part of this is we believe is because, first of all, people don't always know, or don't always want to have to make the decisions about how to interact with their systems. I don't always remember to turn the heat down when I leave my house for work every day, or I might forget to turn a light off, or I don't need hot water in the middle of the night, but I would like it first thing when I wake up in the morning and need to hop in the shower. And all of these systems can learn from our preferences and how we tend to interact with these systems to provide us with both better user experience as well as a better kind of energy management at the same time. So in addition to just being able to track and understand energy usage after the fact, there's also a lot of technologies that can help us prioritize and manage our energy use as we go throughout the month or throughout the year. And so we believe it's the combination of both the tracking and the understanding of energy usage, as well as the ability to optimize that energy usage in the home through automation and through both through automation and through manual decisions as well, that will help us drive better energy management systems in the future. So when we did a study a few years ago, and just to excuse us, the data on the right here is a little bit old at this point, but still indicative, I think, of the current state. So there's a lot of subscription revenue models that are in place today for home energy management systems. People are used to paying monthly bills for things like cable and things like utilities and so on. And so, this is something that I think is a relatively easy sell for people, and it allows suppliers to capture value over time. Subscriptions are also a great way to lower the upfront cost. But the issue is that, once you save energy, how often and how long will a consumer continue to pay for energy savings that they've already achieved through the management and the monitoring of their energy usage, right? So even if I'm paying $10 a month, and even if I'm saving $30 a month by using the energy management system, how long am I going to be willing to pay that $10 a month without any added value beyond energy savings? And so energy savings is a great entrance into this opportunity, but we need to understand what the other extension opportunities are beyond energy savings that can help continue to justify the value of these systems, as well as make these opportunities more lucrative for suppliers as well. And so back to the definitions that we had at the front end of what is smart home energy management. Well, of course, it's the ability to monitor and manage energy usage. But because energy impacts all of these different devices and systems within the smart home, we see that there's going to be other value opportunities for suppliers to help, either whether it be just connections and data between these systems, or even kind of understanding things like the current signature of your washing machine to understand if the machine's about to break down. There's these added values on top of just monitoring and managing that energy usage that we believe could be quite lucrative if we understand both what those things are, what's closest to that baseline energy management system that suppliers might be able to help craft into an offering or extend their offering into, as well as what are consumers looking for, what would they find valuable, and so on. And so that is really the focus of the research, is trying to understand what customers will find valuable, what are they willing to pay for, how much are they willing to pay, hopefully, for it, and how might suppliers be able to extend the value that they provide, and get more out of these solutions. So back up to the top a little bit, this is all not occurring in a vacuum. There's a lot of smart home things out there. There's a lot of players targeting the smart home with various different devices and systems, and home hubs are really coming to dominate the current state of the smart home. So having this central interaction point for various smart home devices and systems, as opposed to having to go use an app for each thing. Now, we need to understand where energy fits in. And so obviously, when we talk about lighting or we talk about climate, these types of things are very close to the energy, energy management values, but they also have their own values in and of themselves. And so what we want to understand through this research is kind of where are the hotspots for where people are thinking they would like to monitor and manage energy usage beyond just as a whole. And how it might connect to these other devices and systems within or adjacent to the home. And really, what is energy's place in the smart home of the future? How does it get managed? How does it get dealt with? How do utilities and customers continue to interact? Do consumers or will consumers make decisions about which devices or systems to adopt based on things like energy usage and so on? Are all key questions that we would like to answer. There are some constraints to smart home as a whole that we'll also want to come back to and understand as it relates to energy management specifically. So different sorts of, a variety of network protocols and different types of connectivity models are really kind of hampering the integration of many of these systems in the smart home. We'd like to have as much device interoperability as possible, but some people don't understand the value in that. Some people are afraid of sharing data, and all of that is justified. And so we want to understand kind of what's required and what's really blocking more interoperability and a better user experience from happening, which ultimately, with greater interoperability and a better user experience, you would expect the smart home adoption to accelerate, energy included. And then also a number of software challenges associated with just the integration of data, the collaboration amongst systems and suppliers, and overall security and privacy concerns associated with sharing data about how you use systems to better impact the services that other folks provide. And so there's a number of constraints here, a number of challenges. And so as a part of this research as well, we'll be doing a refresh on this and also trying to understand what are these challenges as it relates specifically to energy management systems and the different types of services that energy systems might enable for consumers. So finally, just to sum this up, we do have a lot of hub and spoke ecosystems today. These are all forming around these home hubs. So understanding energy's place within that will be quite important. We believe that no interface is the best interface. So more automation will be better as we move into the future. So like I had said before, the thermostat that learns my routine and is able to turn the heat or cooling up and down depending on my routine is helpful, as is, automatically turning lights off and so on. And so while you'll never get rid of all user interfaces, the primary user interface shouldn't be an interface. It should be these systems and devices learning how we want to interact with the systems in our home and making decisions for us or helping us make decisions. True interoperability across these systems will be required. So this is kind of what the home hubs are trying to solve for people today, but really thinking about not just a central connectivity point and the home hub, but understanding that maybe when I'm done working in my basement office, the lights go off and there's a different HVAC mechanisms that divert heat or cooling from the basement into the main level of the house. All of this needs to be done through a set of through interoperability of different systems in the home, breaking down silos to help drive a better integration and communication of data points that allow these systems to truly be automated altogether. And then overall, this idea of energy management does become integral. And while we might be uncertain about how these systems will expand today, sustainability focuses, volatile energy prices, more solutions available, all of this will help drive adoption. It's just where, when, how that we want to answer through this research. And of course, we believe, based on these other takeaways, that the best systems will be those ones that integrate more directly with other smart home systems and aren't unto themselves. And so there's some value in the collaboration or coordination of these systems across the board here. So with that, I will switch gears a little bit and just roll through a couple of slides that provide an overview of the landmark research project that we're working on with CABA this year, the Smart Home Energy Management work. These pages are a little bit dense, so apologies for that, but I'll work with Greg and Marta here to make sure that folks have access to these materials after the fact, so you can take a little bit closer read through them. So we have a number of research questions that we're trying to cover, and I actually had to cut the research questions in about half to fit them on this page. So you can tell that there's a lot that we're trying to cover here. But everything from trends and forces, such as certain regulatory or socioeconomic forces that are occurring, what the life cycle of somebody's smart home energy management system and their use of that looks like. Who are the key players in this space? What are the key technologies that are enabling these systems, and so on. We'll want to understand this all up front to set the landscape. We'll also be delving deep into customer needs, adoption, and buying behavior. And we'll talk about the processes that we'll be incorporating to do that on the next page. But things like what are customers' preferences, both within the broader smart home as well as within their use or desires for energy management systems. What would they value in the use of these systems? How would they think about ROI, or how would they think about the value coming from these systems, and overall kind of, how do they want to interact with suppliers and so on. We'll also be looking at the supply side of the story, understanding what is the landscape for solutions out there, how different players are working together to solve customer needs, who's leading, who's, a newcomer that might be doing something innovative and so on, and what are the different business models that could be employed for success in the marketplace. And then what are the future considerations associated with all of these solutions and systems? How will they integrate with the rest of the smart home? Who will be the key providers and interactors with these systems? And what is the implications of wider adoption of energy management on other players in the marketplace besides just the consumers that might be benefiting from that? We'll go through a 4-step research and analysis process. We'll start with a pretty extensive literature review, both of all the other CABA reports that are relevant, as well as of third-party reports and our own experience in this space over the past 10 to 15 years in particular. We'll be doing an extensive survey of 500 to 750 consumers, tenants, both rent and own, single and multi-tenant, to understand the current state of these systems, what their desires are, wants, needs, and pain points associated with both just how they interact with energy in their home, as well as how they might already interact with energy management systems, and looking at this in various regions and across different demographics within the US and Canada. We'll also be conducting a supplementary set of interviews, about 10 or so, with suppliers of energy management systems and other market participants that might interact with these systems, to get their view. Where's the design and the technologies that support solutions evolving to? What do they see as the future of all of this? And how are companies organizing to best serve customers here? And so we'll be putting both that demand side and that supply side together in our analysis to understand where these main opportunities are, what are the attractive business models and ways of interacting between suppliers and consumers, and where there might be opportunities for everybody across the landscape to participate in these types of solutions. All of this will help drive a set of deliverables, both including pretty close interaction with the project funders and steering committee during the scoping of the research, as well as the initial phases of the research as we work to actually draft, as we conduct the survey and the interviews, as well as draft up the report. The final deliverables, which are the most important, are a full-length report, typically about 100 pages or so in length, covering a number of topics in smart home energy management, final webinars for each individual funder themselves, and other folks in their business, as well as a think tank-like interaction where we'll gather market participants and funders alike together to help kind of discuss and review the findings and see how we might best apply those moving forward. So with that, I will open it up for questions. I know I've been talking for the past 30 minutes here. So thank you, everybody, for listening, and hopefully you found this all valuable. Happy to answer any questions as they come up. And as I said, we can work with Marta and Greg to make sure everybody receives these slides. I'm looking at, I don't see any questions yet in the Q&A. I'm not sure if people have the opportunity to go off mute and speak, but feel free to do that as well.
You hear me? This is David. Do you have indoor air quality? I mean, that seems to be a new topic that, you know, the government is pushing. How does it fit in?
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And as Greg said, we are covering indoor air quality, particularly related to larger scale commercial buildings and the other landmark research project. But in our initial research there, we are finding that decisions that people make around things like air filters and different sorts of HVAC systems that they can use to improve air quality also have significant impacts on energy usage in the home as well. And so I think that is an example of one of those kind of extended value propositions or adjacent value propositions that might be a lead-in for some additional energy management values as well, and is obviously very close when we talk about kind of the you know, the use of climate systems and the energy that those use is one of the major energy uses in the home. So I think those are definitely very closely related. You know, definitely adjacent applications, if not closely coupled there. I am seeing a question come up in the Q&A. Thank you. So how to see the business opportunities for energy saving. So energy management and energy saving is by no means new. It's something that's been around for decades, and you know, was really mostly aimed at commercial and industrial users of energy, these larger scale users of energy systems. But in the home, there's still a lot of energy savings value that could be had. And like I said, especially as prices increase, understanding even a 5, 10, 15% reduction in energy usage, just from knowing that, you know, certain systems are on when they shouldn't need to be, or you know, there's certain things using energy in my home that should be turned off, or whatever it is. You know, there's many opportunities for that. And so what the actual savings opportunities depends on how granular you can look at energy usage in the home, as well as you know, how you can make, or how these systems or service providers make recommendations to people in how they can save that energy. So are you relying on the user to interpret the data, right? Or are you relying on a service provider who has experts on staff to help you interpret that data and say, hey, it looks like you are, you know, running your dishwasher too much, or, you know, if you you know, cut down on whatever certain lighting usage, we think you could save energy that way. And so it's a combination of both how granular can you see into the home, as well as how and who is interpreting that data for the homeowner or tenant in that case, and driving the energy savings out of there. So I see another question from David. Thank you, David. Do you see a remote fault detection of HVAC like we have in alarms? I mean, yes. I mean, I see kind of both remote monitoring as well as fault detection and kind of alerts coming from many different systems within the home. And a lot of this can feed into the energy management system, but like I was saying, related to the air quality, may be seen as somewhat adjacent. That said, and I think I kind of brought this example up as I was going through some of the slides here. You know, we used to work with a company that was able to sense different current signatures coming from different home appliances and systems, and be able to tell by those current signatures things like whether you were using your washing machine for a load of whites or a load of darks, or if you were using different appliances in different ways. And you could also tell through those energy signatures, say if the washing machine or the other appliance was working too hard and therefore might be might be in need of some service or some maintenance. And so understanding that there's very granular information that you can collect, and very, if you apply some analytics to it, understand that, even something as analog as current signatures can tell you a lot about how a machine or how an appliance or how the HVAC system is functioning. That can be a very significant tie-in of energy to things like monitoring equipment and systems to make sure that they're running smoothly, or if they're not, that something is done about it, that service providers get notified and that somebody gets sent to the house to repair it.
Harry, this is Ken Wax. May I?
Yeah, please.
I chair the World Standards Body for ISO and IEC, headquartered in Geneva. It's a voluntary organization, and nearly all the countries on our planet are members of one committee or another. I chair the committee responsible for home and building systems, including energy management. We have published international standards on energy management that focus on using automation as much as possible to help consumers determine not just on focusing on one appliance, but how to look at where they should get their electricity, because more and more consumers are having choices from the public side and from their local generation side, their own solar, wind, and storage. And recognizing that there is a cost to energy, and it may be economical to allocate power to appliances at certain times, we use the automation to help consumers determine how to meet their goals. Now, their goals might obviously be budget, but some consumers are concerned about the fuel sources and pollution. Some are concerned by their own carbon footprint. So we're not here to tell consumers what they should want, but give them opportunities. I've written a series of articles that I'm continuing to write for the CABA Journal, which is available on the CABA website under research. You just click on the CABA Journal, you'll see all my articles that I started last year, and every few months I publish another article, and I just submitted the latest one a few days ago. So you can get a good handle on what we're doing internationally, and I'd be glad to speak with you as you progress through the program.
Yeah, that would be great, and it sounds like some very interesting work. And I'm sure you guys have some really good data and some insights on this as well. So we'd definitely love to collaborate on this. And
our basic philosophy is the more automated it can be, considering that it needs to be under consumer control, needs to be respectful of consumer wishes and consumer data. But the main thing is we're not going to really educate consumers to watch a graph or a spreadsheet or a barcode every day and figure out when to do the close.
Right, exactly. More automated it can be, the better, within reason, and still giving people the ability to control the systems in their home is quite important.
Well, the key is to get the consumer electronics industry tuned into this and treat it as a money-making opportunity to sell us all sorts of systems to save energy.
Right. And I think, and I see Victor posted a question in the Q&A as well. I think this does speak to the current status of interoperability of these systems is relatively low. And the sharing of data between these systems is relatively low. Data that doesn't even really necessarily impact or have privacy concerns for the consumer that owns the device or the system. And so there will be opportunities for companies of all stripes, both consumer electronics as well as other sorts of suppliers to the home, to be able to kind of integrate into these systems or feed data from into or take data from these systems in ways that can help drive new values. But there's a relative lack of interoperability today. It's getting better, but there's still a long way to go to achieve that more fully automated future.
I should mention that we have published international standards addressing interoperability. This is fundamentally a business issue.
Yes.
Companies will make grand pronouncements about wishing to be interoperable. You've heard many recently. Whether they actually follow through, and when push comes to shove, their marketing department doesn't say, stop it because we're becoming a commodity. That's the big fear.
Yes, of course. And, you know, they might say that they're willing to be interoperable, but at the end of the day, Amazon wants you to use Amazon things and Google wants you to use Google things. And, you know, they have built these walled garden ecosystems that are really preventing, as we would say, that the true kind of scope of automation and smart home activities that could really drive value for consumers. And so understanding how to break down some of those walls is quite important, and it requires those standards, like you said, as well as it requires the business case. And so I think that's a lot where we'll be focused on, is trying to paint that business case picture in this research.
You know, it took decades for us to get consumer electronic entertainment equipment to be pluggable, so you could have a recorder plug into your TV with things like RCA plugs and HDMI. So it can happen, but it takes a while.
Yeah, exactly. Good. Awesome. Other questions, or we've got a few minutes left, or I can hand it, Greg, back over to you to talk about next steps, or if folks want to get engaged.
Yeah. So the next steps would be, if you are interested in joining the research project, definitely send me off a quick email at walker@caba.org, and we can set up a call to go over the next steps. We're looking to start this project probably in about a month's time, fairly soon, maybe 3 weeks to 5 weeks or so. Get a few more funders on board, and then launch the project, and then we'll have a timeline about when it's going to be completed. But there's different funding levels to getting the research. Would cost $5,000. And you get to share the full research project, or you can join at the steering committee, which most do, at the $10,000. And but if you want to have a call to learn more about it, feel free to reach out. But good presentation, Harry. It's very good.
Of course. And I was just going to mention as well, if anybody else on the call would like to even participate as a research participant, or would like us to talk to them about their solution, or other research that we've done in the space, feel free to reach out to my email as well, and I can make sure that we get connected with the right people. We're always looking for new people to talk to. So thank you, everybody, for your time and attention. And we look forward to interacting with you in the coming months.
Thanks a lot.